Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast powered by Olipop.
That's a good crack right there.
It's a great crack, but your hand covers it.
It does?
Yes, your hand covers the mic.
Dang it.
But by the way, folks.
Did you hear?
Camp, no, what?
Was it resounding enough?
Your facial expression was. For those on the podcast, he gets great joy of cracking it open when I say powered by Olipop, but his hand covers the mic.
We're going to have to work on the technique for next time. Vintage cola is the flavor of the evening, folks. But yes, Olipop.
Travis Davidson, Grill Boy, for those that don't know, was talking to me last night about his Olipop and the vintage cola at one married Parker Thune because it was at his wedding. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations. It was a beautiful wedding for those of us that were there. It was awesome. But he said that he mixed some sort of whiskey with it or whatnot, and he loved it.
By the way, we need to I need a verdict. Completely unrelated, but I'm glad whiskey and Olipop is the move. He told me he didn't have any drinks, so he's lying to one of us. I don't know who.
I'm gonna bet it
completely unrelated. I need a verdict in the court of public opinion because about 20 minutes before my wedding, my dad is pinning on my boutonniere, right? And it's a white rose. And he pins it on my left lapel. And then he says, and my uncle's there too, my dad's brother. They're both kind of helping me out.
Go get him, Tiger.
Yeah, exactly. So he pins my boutonniere on the left lapel and then said, no, you know what? That's crowding your pocket square. Let's put it on the other side. So he puts it on the other side. And at the time I was like, I don't think that's how it's supposed to be, but okay. Like my dad is a pretty fashionable guy. So I trust his opinion.
He is. I was actually shocked how young he looks, bro.
Now,
goodness gracious.
I got probably 5 or 6 comments over the course of the night about how my boutonniere was pinned on the wrong side. So generally, like, my dad does not.
It's the same size. It's supposed to be the same size of the pocket, bro.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. Like, that was my instinct. Yep. So I was like, something feels off, but I'm just gonna leave it be. But yeah, I don't know whether it is legitimately acceptable to have it on either side or whether I should have put my foot down and said, nope, left side is where it's supposed to be. So please, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know in the comments. Is it acceptable to have the boutonniere on the right side or not? Is it always left?
You come here for football talk, you get wedding, boutonniere, and tuxedo talk.
Yeah, and by the way, we're sponsored by Olipop.
Under the Visor Sooners
as Brandon already mentioned.
By Olipop.
Brought to you by Olipop, the soda that's good for you. There were nearly 200 cans of it at my wedding. 14 delicious flavors, never more than 5 grams of sugar, 9 grams of fiber, natural sweeteners, juices, extracts, all natural stuff with which they create this lovely concoction that tastes exactly like your traditional big box soda, but is actually good for you and has no detriments to your health whatsoever. So give Olipop a try by going to drinkolipop.com and using promo code CHAMPU20 for 20% off. That's CHAMPU20. Or just go pick up a can at your local Walmart, Sprouts, Whole Foods, or Target. Anyway, on to football.
Yeah, well, guess what? Fall camp started. You know what that means? It's football time! I do that every year. I got that one in, and it is awesome. I do it in spring ball in the beginning of fall camp, and it is fantastic. And guess what? It is football time. They were in Shells today when we got a 40-minute viewing session. The first one on Friday, they were in helmet, t-shirt, and shorts. What I thought was interesting, and this has not something that we per se viewed or observed, if you will, But Walter Rouse asking him a question post practice today, and I said, "So now that you've been through a week of practice at Oklahoma, and now that you have a feeling for how things are going, can you kind of explain or expound on how you the differences between Oklahoma and Stanford?" What he said was really interesting because it's exactly what we think as people that cover OU and probably as OU fans think, or people in the South in general think. But to hear a guy say that it's just more intense, it's more like game like at the practices. He said our Stanford practices were very, he said we went hard, but they're not as, you know, the level of intensity doesn't reach near the level it does at Oklahoma. And he said, assuming the other places in this conference. So that to me, I thought was interesting because we've always thought that, but now we know it. A guy that played for 4 years or 3 years at Stanford comes to Oklahoma, and a weekend he's like, whoa. He said, even in shorts and t-shirts, he said it was like live, like they were hitting the shoulders. He said that he went up against, I want to say it was Bothroyd. He said Bothroyd hit him and pushed him back real hard. And obviously Bothroyd's from the ACC, he's a Southern guy. And he said the first time he goes, he was just taken aback by how hard they went in shorts and t-shirts. And then he said, oh, okay, it's on. And at that point, he said he turned it on. Now, I will say this about, I think Rouse is going to be really good. But when I talk to people about that tackle spot in particular, they always bring up Jake Sexton. Big Sexy's brought up. I know he's not 100%,
But
but
he's
they
sure
said
practicing like it.
that he is. And they love what he can do. Everybody I talk to is like, that is going to be the guy there. That is going to be the guy there. And I believe it because remember last year when they brought up Sexton, most people said that he's not going to be there more than 3 years. Like he's not going to be there for 4. He'll be there for 3 and that's it. They thought he was going to be one of those guys that goes to the draft after his junior year. Now, will the knee and maybe takes a little bit longer to get full strength and go. But if what he is at 80% is still what everybody's talking about, can you imagine? Like he had a really fantastic end of season last year. It was very unfortunate with the knee. And Lebia was very, very almost arrogant about the offensive line. Did you watch what he was saying? Like he is so confident in that offensive line, dude.
As he should
So
be.
confident.
As he should be. Now, I get that they have a good deal of turnover last season to this season. They've got to replace 3 starters, 2 of whom were NFL draft picks and early round picks, and Anton Harrison, who went in round 1, and Wanya Morris, who went in round 3. But the cogs are all there, and you have a savant coaching them in Bill Bedenbaugh. So my level of concern regarding the offensive line is very low because everybody wants to take McCade Matire to task for his performance a year ago. And you know what? That's like evaluations of offensive line play are by nature very subjective, right? There's not a whole lot of statistical data to go off. So I understand that some people will have very negative perceptions of the way that he played a year ago, and I'm not going to try to talk you down from that. But what I will say is if McCade Matire was looked upon as the weak link for an offensive line last year, that by many advanced metrics was top 5 in the country, particularly when it comes to run blocking. And Jeff Lebby was willing to take McCade Matire and effectively pencil him into the starting lineup last week when he met with the media. What does that say about the state of this line? I would say the natural conclusion there is that they're planning on being pretty good up front.
Right. No, I think they feel really good. I think the depth, I think is, you got, I was told Jake Taylor's had a really good first 4, 5 practices. Um, I was told that obviously Jake Sexton, I was told that Savion Bird has been good.
And Savion Bird has.
The one thing I can tell you, it was a weird name to be brought up to me, was Aaron Parks. Like a light bulb's kind of switched on with him a little bit. Which the funny thing is we saw how good he could be in the bowl game.
Yeah,
Like
he wasn't half bad in the bowl game.
he wasn't that bad for no experience. Are you kidding me? So I think when you look at that, and it all starts up front, and then you hear the buzz about Dylan Gabriel. And I know you fans are going to sit there and go, oh, here we go. You guys are going to be, look, we're not building him up. We're just telling y'all that he's taken massive strides. If you are to believe what people are saying right now. Last year, there was question marks. And none other than this source, I'll say source, that told me, and sorry if I sound nasally, because this allergy season is kicking my butt. But the source told me this about Dylan Gabriel last year. And they said he would not try to take deep shots in 7-on-7 at all last year. None. He always went for his check down or something short. Just didn't have the confidence. Now, obviously, he threw deep balls during the season. We saw it.
Sure.
He overthrew quite a bit too. Well, you don't have as many reps on the deep passes. You generally don't have the timing down as well. Fast forward to this offseason in the summer, in the 7-on-7 this summer. And the same source goes, dude, he's like super confident. He's taking the 50-50 shots and letting his receivers go make plays. He sees it really quickly. Like it's almost like, yeah, he's played in that system before. But remember, he was only in it for a year before Levy left. That's correct, right, Parker?
I believe it was 1 year. Yeah, 1 year.
Yep.
1 year, because Levy was at Ole Miss in 20 and 21. So 1 year.
Yeah. So it's very easy to sit there and say, well, he should have already been comfortable. Dude, he played in a different system for 2 years. Essentially. So, and I don't want to say completely different, but I'm sure some of the verbiage was different. I'm sure some of the route tree was a little bit different. I'm sure some of the, the footwork and everything that goes into, you have to hit up 6 yards. You can't go any further than 6. You have to cut at 12 or do whatever. Like there's certain things that you do within an offense that are different between each system, particularly route running and how you break off certain routes and where you have to look and where your first key is and where your first read is and all that type of stuff. So it was him getting comfortable again, just trying to get comfortable, just trying to feel his way out. And unfortunately for Oklahoma, it compounded into a 6-7 season where he had some miscues that really hurt Oklahoma, i.e., 2 overthrown passes against Kansas State to Drake Stoops that he would have just walked into the end zone. And I know Parker and I remember those plays, and I'm sure there's plenty of fans listening that remember those plays as well. So my point is that when we hear he's taking great strides, and it was people were talking about it this summer. We're not saying he's going to go out and win the Heisman. We're not saying he's going to go out and be first team all Big 12. What we're saying is that he's taking strides. His understanding's better. He has really good running back corp around him. He has a really good tight end in Austin Stogner. He has a really good offensive line. If he can get on the same page with his receivers, there's a really good chance, because the offense wasn't the problem last year.
No.
There is a good chance that they're pretty damn good on offense.
Without question, right? And like, here's what I want everyone to understand is that Dylan Gabriel, I don't think if you're listening to the right people, the Dylan Gabriel hype has never been overblown because we we were not sitting here a year ago saying, "Oh, Dylan Gabriel is going to win the Heisman." In fact, I remember saying quite the opposite. Please don't expect that Dylan Gabriel is going to be in New York come season's end, because for a guy with his skill set and his natural limitations, when you think about his stature and athleticism, and he's got plus athleticism, but he's not by any means a true dual threat. I don't think anyone would categorize him as that. But there are some limitations in the way that he plays the game that compel you to keep expectations modest with a guy like that. And as long as you are modest with your expectations, I think what you see with a guy like Dylan Gabriel is what you get, because he's he may never throw for 500 yards and 6 touchdowns in a game, but he's never going to have a debacle of an outing where he can't hit the broadside of a barn. And for Dylan Gabriel a year ago, I know he took some flack for the way that he played, but statistically, by many measures, he was a solidly above average quarterback in the landscape of college football. And so if it is indeed the case, and I think what you said is worth remembering right there, Brandon, offense was not the issue last year. Dylan Gabriel and that Oklahoma offense did enough to win double-digit games, as I see it. So if it is indeed the case that Dylan Gabriel has taken even some strides from a year ago, if there is some measure of improvement, it doesn't have to be night and day different. But I'm not saying he needs to make a quantum leap and be the Heisman frontrunner, but as long as there is some measure of improvement in his play, especially when it comes to accuracy on that deep ball, and you also see the defense take a step up, it is not far-fetched to figure that Oklahoma could win the Big 12 and potentially knock on the door of a college football playoff berth. And what I'm trying to get across here is exactly what I was trying to get across a year ago at this time with Dylan Gabriel, which is that the Sooners' fate as a football team is not and should not be squarely on his shoulders. And
Correct.
as long as he is who he is, and as long as he can stay fully healthy over the course of a season, and as long as he is playing the low-risk, efficient style of football that has always suited him, Oklahoma offensively is not going to leave a whole lot to be desired.
No, okay, so there was a left-handed quarterback at Oklahoma that had very similar traits to him. Wasn't the biggest.
Kendall Thompson.
No,
I'm just kidding.
No. Hey, I'm a Thompson guy. I'm the family is a good family to me, so you'll never hear jokes out of me. But there was another guy that was short, left-handed. Didn't have the strongest arm in the world, but he was smart and always took what the defense gave him. And OU just so happened to win 13 games in a national title with that quarterback in Josh Heupel. I bring that name up, and I bring that up, and I'm not saying OU's going to win a national title. I'm not even predicting them to win the Big 12 outright, to be honest with you. But my point, I mean, I think I did predict them to win the Big 12, but my point is that you don't have to be Jackson Arnold, Mr. 5-star, Mr. Everything, to win a bunch of games in college football. You have to be able to, because the systems are predicated around your strengths and your weaknesses. So at the end of the day, if you're Oklahoma and you're Jeff Lebby, you're not going to put Dylan Gabriel in a spot that he can't throw. Maybe he can't. He's not real good at throwing post routes or drive routes over the middle, or I don't know. He obviously didn't throw over the middle a whole lot last year. So maybe that's a weakness that he worked on and he got better at that could help them win ball games this year, particularly if the defense is better. But we brought up Jackson Arnold, and I'll tell you this. Everybody I've talked to is like that dude is he's unbelievable. Like there's gonna be another statue, is what a lot of people have said. Like if you talk to people around that program, is like there'll be another statue in Norman at some point before he leaves. Like they think he's that good. Probably a little bit of hyperbole, if you ask me, but I think he's really good and has a chance to be an All Big 12 quarterback. Has a chance to be an NFL quarterback. Obviously, I think he was the best quarterback out of high school last year. I don't think it was close, to be honest with you, just for what I've seen. And he can run. Like I think what surprised a lot of people within that program is that they've let him run a little bit during this fall, and they've said he takes off and he can scoot. And I think that's something that is gonna help Oklahoma quite a bit. His legs, you're gonna be able, and not just with Jackson Arnold, Dylan Gabriel is gonna be able to run the ball a lot more this year because they have Jackson Arnold backing him up. And I asked Levy just today. I said, "Hey, where are you, the quarterbacks? You know, how do you feel?" He's like, "Obviously, we feel a lot better. You know, Jackson's learning the offense. He makes reads a lot quicker than he did during the spring. He sees things a lot quicker. Therefore, he's playing a lot better." And he said, "We're going to be able to do a lot more with the quarterback because of the comfortability that they have." So I think that is critical for Oklahoma moving forward, because the lack of QB run game last year with Dylan in spots that we would be like, dude, he needs to keep that on the zone read. But it was obviously a zone read, but it was predetermined handoff every time because they weren't going to put him in that situation because of TCU, right? They weren't going to do that. They did it at TCU, and it cost them. Not going to happen again. They can do that this year because they feel confident they have a backup. For Oklahoma to, Parker, I'm going to ask you this, though. For Oklahoma to take that next step defensively, outside of the defensive line, that's the easiest answer. What has to be done? Offense, defense, what have you. What do they have to do better?
I think for this team in particular, if you're going to discard the defensive line from the conversation, I think you got to have somebody emerge at wide receiver. And this is something we talked about, Brandon. I don't think this is taking anybody by surprise, the fact that I'm bringing this up. But when I look at the wide receiver room, man, there are so many guys with limitless potential. Like, for instance, if we want to talk about a first-round body, and obviously we haven't seen much of him on the field yet, but if we're just strictly talking, you know, a guy that fits the mold of an elite wide receiver, goodness gracious, Nick Anderson is that guy. I mean, he looks good out there on the practice field.
There's a lot of buzz about him, by the way, behind the scenes.
He has always had the makeup. In high school, he played in an offense that didn't really utilize wide receivers hardly at all. First year of college, he was banged up. Probably would have played a lot more. As long as he avoids the injury bug in year 2, man, that kid's going to make some stuff happen. I don't know if it's because he wears the same jersey number or whatever, but Jaquez Petaway looks like a baby Marvin Mims out there. And I have heard some very nice things echoed about the freshman wideout, the only freshman wideout on the roster at Oklahoma. So, in fact, I was told he was repping some with the ones today at practice, which obviously, you know, like it's week 2 of camp. So we'll see if that holds. But I think you could tell from Jeff Lebby's presser last week, he was genuinely excited, and you could see it in his face when somebody, I can't remember who, prompted him to talk about Jaquez Petaway. And he said, yeah, we're going to like Jaquez in our offense. And it's just another weapon in the passing game that I think Sooner fans can be excited about. Somebody that, you know, if he doesn't see the field a whole lot in year 1, okay. I mean, he's a true freshman in a deep group. That maybe that's not the expectation that people have for him, but, you know, it's almost like he can't help but exceed expectations. When that room is so stacked and you are the only true freshman amongst the bunch, if you don't crack the rotation in any meaningful capacity, I don't know that anybody will look at it as a massive failure. But if Jacquez Petaway carries this momentum into the season and is able to carve out a role in the offense immediately, then watch out, because as Mims himself showed in 2020, doesn't really matter how old you are, man. As long if you can build up equity and you can build up trust with the snaps that you're given in season, it doesn't matter who's on the depth chart in front of you. You're going to rise up at the wide receiver position, because that is a position where you got to have playmakers. And Jacquez Petaway is without question a playmaker. Gavin Freeman, we've heard Brent Venables say so many complimentary things about his work on and off the gridiron to put himself in position to have a breakout sophomore season. And some of the GPS tracking numbers this summer, let's just say Freeman has had some pretty impressive times with some of the measurements that they've done.
Yeah. So I was talking to somebody today, and they said, look, Drake Stoops is going to start at that spot. And I said, obviously. But as this person told me, and this person would know more than almost anybody when it comes to the Sooners offense, they said it doesn't matter who starts the game. The starters are irrelevant at receiver. And the way they posed it to me was just very, very eloquent. It was just, do you want to know why they said, you want to know why it's irrelevant? Because anybody can start a game and run a hitch route and catch and make a play or two. Anybody can go and block on the first play of the game and go, or in the first drive, catch a pass here or there, block here or there, do whatever. First 2 or 3 minutes of the game, first drive in general. He said, but what matters is, who does Oklahoma have out there in the nitty-gritty time? Who are the receivers that are out there? At the end of the day, they're going to have the guys they feel that can go win the ball game for them. And that's what matters. Not who's number one on the depth chart or all that, because there's a lot of different reasons why somebody's number one on a depth chart. Doesn't mean they're going to take more reps. Doesn't mean they're going to take more snaps. I think at the end of the day, Gavin Freeman, whether he starts or doesn't start, will be viewed as a starter by almost everybody on that offense.
Well, and look, Levy has said he wants to be using 6 or 7 receivers, right? So it's almost the same deal as, when we're talking about the running backs. I think is a really natural parallel, because Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, it doesn't really matter who's technically the starter, right? We're going to be used to seeing both of those guys on the field a lot. So yeah, even if Gavin Freeman isn't technically a starter, he's going to be seeing starter type snaps. And man, Brandon Thompson is intriguing to me, because you can see the burst. It's evident, but he's also small, man. 5'9", 155 pounds. So physically, I have my questions as to whether he can be a cornerstone contributor this year for Oklahoma. I feel like Schmitty's got to work on him a little bit more before he can morph into that dude. But the gadget potential with a guy like that, I think, just adds a very interesting dynamic to this offense. And if Thompson, if he touches the ball 3 times a game, 2-3 times, like if you get the ball in his hands 2-3 times, but you can find creative ways to get him in space and you can make him a home run threat every time he touches the ball, man, I think he'll be good for 4 or 5 big plays over the course of the season if he's utilized correctly. And then, man, I know it's never the sexiest thing to hear good buzz about the guy that can produce, but I've heard really good things about Jalil Farouk. And but like, you get what I'm saying though. Like that's the least.
It's just you're going to hear somebody on the other end. Well, we won't hear them, but somebody's going, Well, no, duh, Parker. He's only started for like 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. Which, going into his junior season, I think the expectation is that he moves into a wide receiver one type of role after being after playing second fiddle to Marvin Mims last year in the offense.
Yeah, but do you think
And
he takes that wide receiver one role?
see,
Like,
and that's kind of the question for me. Um, I don't doubt that he's capable of it. And Emmett Jones, I thought this was an interesting comparison. Last week, Emmett Jones compared him to Percy Harvin in the open field, which and he wasn't. I don't think he was trying to directly compare Jalil Farouk to Percy
man,
Harvin as a
that's that.
football
Whoa.
player. Yeah, but what he was saying was when Farouk gets the ball in his hands, he's got some of that same knack
Google.
for
Yeah.
elusive ability that Percy Harvin displayed at Florida. So
Which we saw in the Alamo Bowl a couple of years ago.
yeah, well, I mean, just because like he's such a well-rounded football player. I keep in
Right.
mind he had an offer from Clemson and Brent Venables to play safety. So he could have played either side of the ball in college. He grew up playing running back too. So he's just a very well-rounded football player. And I don't think like Percy Harvin was the type of guy that would just make you miss because he could cut on a dime and accelerate stupid fast. I don't think Jalil Farouk is necessarily that type of player, but if you're just talking about his ability to make guys miss in the open field one way or another, whether that's body him up, getting physical, stiff arm, something like that, or making a miss with, a cutback, a juke, whatever the case may be, that's somebody, you get him the ball in space too. He can make stuff happen. And is he
Right.
going to run away from you the way that Brennan Thompson might or somebody like Gavin Freeman might? No, not necessarily. But you don't have to have breakaway speed to be a 1,000-yard receiver, right? And I think about CeeDee Lamb in his early days in Oklahoma. At that point, he didn't have breakaway speed. He had good speed, didn't have breakaway speed, not till his junior year. But when you understand how to get open, how to create separation, and you're reliable, and the quarterback knows he can look your way
Yeah.
when he needs 7-8 yards to move the chains, then there's always going to be a role for you in the offense. And so Farouk is a guy that is going to be a big piece of the puzzle for Oklahoma, whether that's as wide receiver one or wide receiver two, I don't know, but somebody that you can pretty reliably pencil in as a starter.
Yeah.
All
And
13, 14 games of a season.
I guess the last guy, well, offensive wise, I think the the way the coaches, particularly Jeff Lebby and Brent Venables, have talked about Austin Stogner so far through fall camp has almost been uh it's not surprising. I don't want to use that type of description. I more or less, to me, it's, I guess, on par of what we all expected, mainly because you lose Braden Willis and you get the guy that comes in. The guy that comes in is the one that was ahead of him on the depth chart. Like, so could it worked out any better for Jeff Lebby? And then when you watch Austin Stogner run his routes, when you watch the way the coaches and the team, I guess, communicate with him and react around him, is almost like he's revered a little bit, like, because of the expectations they have for him. They think he's going to be special. And Levy was asked today, hey, can you use him the way you use Braden Willis? He said, absolutely. Absolutely. They said, Austin Stogner is an underrated athlete. He's not the fastest, but he's fast enough. And he has his catch radius. They said it's just absurd. They said his physicality dwarfs what Braden Willis was capable of, as far as
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
right. Like,
that's an easy thing to forget about Austin Stogner, I think, because it's been so long since you've seen it. And I think there are two seminal moments for me that stand out with Austin Stogner regarding his physicality and his ability to just go get a ball, right? One was the catch he made in his very final game as a Sooner before transferring to South Carolina, that Oklahoma State game in Stillwater in 2021. Actually, shoot, you know what? There are three. I'll go three here because he made a phenomenal contested catch for a touchdown against Oklahoma State in 2021. Had to go up for it, had to outfox a defender for it. And then you rewind to 2020, and there were two of them that come to mind. There was one in the back of the end zone against Texas Tech where he just had to go up and outmuscle a couple dudes to bring it down, and he did. And then, of course, I think if there is one play that defines Austin Stogner's career at Oklahoma, it is that catch in the first overtime of the Red River Showdown in 2020.
yeah, saved their
Where the
season.
Sooners have, what was it, 3rd and 7 from the 8-yard line. And if Austin Stogner doesn't make a contested catch on a really good ball from Spencer Rattler at the goal line over a Texas defender, Oklahoma probably doesn't win that football game.
It wasn't just one Texas defender. There was three. He had to put one. Spencer Rattler had to put the ball exactly where it needed to be. Two, Stogner just outmuscled everybody. And I think, like you said, that is such a underrated trait of his. And so I think last year they tried a few things, jump balls to Braden Willis. He's just not capable because he was 6'3", 6'2.5", 6'3". He's not much taller than you and I. And they're throwing jump balls at him like he is Austin Stogner, like he has a 7-foot catch radius. Like Austin Stogner, I was talking to his dad one day, and he said his wingspan is almost 7 foot. So when you add that to that 6'6" frame, right? Dude goes up there to grab the ball. 99% of the time, he's going to be the one coming down with it. And the perfect example you gave was at Oklahoma State, where Caleb Williams threw it up. It was a back shoulder throw, but it was an underthrown back shoulder throw because Caleb Williams was just getting lit when he threw the ball. And the ball, Stog turns around, jumps over the Oklahoma State defender. Mind you, I believe it was their best safety that he jumped over as well. And brought it down, while also his length is also what allowed it to be a touchdown because he turned his body. And for a guy his size, his body control is unbelievable. Like he has great control over everything that he does. And all those things they're going to use. So when you talk about, and we're saying all this and talking about each and every player that we've brought up, because every one of those players are what's going to make Oklahoma better on offense if they are to do it. They have to be successful individually at those particular positions for them to be successful. And I think lastly, it gets down to not just one person, but two people. And that's Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk. And you could probably throw a third in there if Marcus Major can be healthy, because once again, and all you fans are like, I'm so tired of this Marcus Major talk. All he does is get injured. And we see it on the message board, OUinsider.com VIP board, all the time. But if he can stay healthy, we've also seen how good he can be. That's kind of the fine line you're dealing with when it comes to Marcus Major. The good news for Oklahoma is that Dalen Smothers, Hollywood, has been that dude already. Like, they love his versatility. They said for a lighter weight guy, he's physical. And they said he'll lay the hammer down on him if he has to. They said he's a very young DeMarco Murray, is what a lot of people say he reminds them of.
Well, and I remember
he also wears number 7, ironically.
Yes, and I remember when Dalen Smothers committed to Oklahoma and having a conversation with him. One of the things he told me is that in his conversations with DeMarco Murray, DeMarco told him that Oklahoma felt Dalen was the best back in the country. And, to a certain extent, you can write that off and say, okay, any coach trying to recruit a player would tell that player the exact same thing.
A source
But
at Oklahoma told me the exact phrase too.
exactly
Take that for what it is.
exactly. Exactly. So, and I think the prevailing thought with Dalen Smothers, both at Oklahoma and elsewhere, is that if he'd gotten to play his senior season, he probably would have risen substantially in the rankings. And not playing his senior season is what kept him in that high 3-star, low 4-star territory, when in reality, he was probably a lot more talented, is probably a lot more talented than those rankings would show you at face value. So,
correct.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about in the backfield with Smothers and with Caleb Hicks, who I don't want to make it seem like we're trying to tick every box with the running back group and make it seem like it's going to be a 5-way split in the backfield or anything like
No,
that.
it's two. It's 50-50.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe
I
a
guess what we're
10%
saying
of
is
Mark's major.
those guys, their time is going to come.
Yeah.
And when it does, they've got the potential to be special.
Yeah, and
DeMarco Murray is good at evaluating running backs, Brand.
Dude, he's good at recruiting, obviously. Taylor Tatum, Dalen Smothers, Caleb Hicks, Gavin Sawchuk, Javante Barnes. That's one hell of a running back room, bro. That's one hell of a running back room. Remember when Oklahoma fans were like, well, how come Alabama keeps getting all these guys? Why can't we, speaking as an OU fan, ever get that? And we were always like, dude, like, you guys do realize that that's what Alabama does is pretty special as far as running backs and getting them to sit there and wait. Oh, you fans, now you see what that's like. Your running back room looks like that, and you have Taylor Tatum coming in and Xavier Robinson in 2024. They're just stacking on stacking on stacking right now as far as talent goes. And I think the cool thing about what Oklahoma's going to do, because I think, remember when we would see a lot of split backs, two backs with, P. Ryan and Mixon, and then you would see.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, well, then you would see Sermon and Anderson, or Sermon and Ramondre Stevenson, when we'd have both those guys in there. So I'm going to bet you all money that we're going to see that this year. And I'll bet you if anybody goes in motion, it will be Gavin Sawchuk, because he can catch and run routes like a wide receiver. And we saw that. Was that the first practice we went to where they were running routes and they were hitting the running backs like with over the shoulder and seam routes and all that type of stuff? And Gavin Sawchuk made that stupid back shoulder catch. It wasn't it? It was Friday, right? When they did that?
I don't recall.
You probably weren't at that spot, because I was at the wide receivers and I
I
just
was
kind of
probably
looked down and watched that take place. My point is that dude can catch and run routes, and I'll bet you they put him in motion and get him in the slot and get him one-on-one with a linebacker or safety and let him cook, because he's also arguably the fastest guy on the team. So on the defensive side, before we get to the recruiting, what has been the latest buzz that's kind of caught your eye on the defensive side, and throughout the two practices that we've went to, Parker, what stood out to you outside of just buzz you're hearing behind the scenes, but what stood out to you personally?
I think what stands out to me is, and it's a very simple observation, but one that I think is a welcome one for many fans that just want to see a different Oklahoma defense than the one that they saw last year. There's just a ton more beef on that defensive line, Brandon. Guys are bigger. And yeah, they brought in some pretty hefty transfers to shore things up. And
Marcus Strong looks the part.
Yeah, Phil Paya, Dejon Terry, Jacob Lacey, even though he's a no contact participant right now. But not only bringing those guys in, but also watching some of those guys make a very clear physical jump in terms of the good bulk that they have. Like, we're not talking bad weight, dead weight. No, these guys are, they've got good bulk. Grayson Halton is a perfect example of this. Grayson Halton last year looked very much like a tweener. Like, he was too small to play inside, but too big to play the edge. I saw him today, Brandon. That dude looks like a full-fledged bona fide defensive tackle. He looks like a guy that could line up as the starter on a Power 5 defense and hold his own. Now, is that what happened? And obviously, there's going to be a ton of competition to start at defensive tackle. But to me, I more cite Halton because I think he is an outstanding example of what happens when you get guys bought into what Jerry Schmidt is doing in the weight room, bought into the coaching staff's vision for them, and they're willing to go the extra mile to get themselves right, get their bodies right. Jonah Laulu is kind of a guy that falls into the same category, can be part of the same conversation. He's up in the neighborhood of 290 pounds. And again, I kind of felt the same way about him last year. Too slender to play inside, too bulky to play defensive end. No, that's a defensive tackle now. And we knew that was going to be a point of emphasis for Oklahoma with how weak they were up front last year. And to compound upon that, you lose Jalen Redmond and you lose Jeffrey Johnson. So you got to replace your two starters anyway. I think to see how so many of these guys have taken the challenge upon themselves to put themselves physically in a position where they're not handing a starting defensive tackle role to Dejon Terry as he walks in the door, or to Isaiah Coe as he ascends. It's probably the most experienced incumbent on this roster, save for Jordan Kelly as a fifth-year senior. I'm encouraged by how much healthy competition there is going to be there amongst guys that are more than capable of playing defensive tackle and thriving as a Power 5 player. Not just capable of pushing the guy in front of them because they're a weight room warrior and they go the extra mile on the practice field. No, these are guys that are capable of playing good ball on Saturdays.
Right. Well, I agree with a lot of what you said. To me, you brought up just the beef on the defensive line, and that, to me, I agree with you. That's a very critical point for Oklahoma this year and crucial for their success on the defensive side. And that's just, stating the obvious, right? And I said Marcus Strong looked good. And my point is Marcus Strong is probably not going to play very much this year, if at all.
No.
But he still looks ridiculously good in that uniform and better than anything Oklahoma had last year at that defensive tackle spot. And that's saying something. So that shows you the transformation of not just the guys that remained on campus and where they were, heading into year one under Brent Venables, tutelage. But it also shows the fact that that's how bad things looked last year on the defensive line for Oklahoma. Like the body types, just the nastiness that they brought to the table. There wasn't a lot of dogs on that defensive line. And the guys that could have been dogs on the defensive line were not consistently dudes like a Jalen Redmond. Like, he should have came back. We know that. And I guarantee you he knows that he should have came back. And everybody tried to tell him he should have came back. Except for a few people that were trying to mooch off of him, right? Like, and that's a sad deal. That's a sad situation and all this stuff. And it sucks. And it's happened a lot. We've seen it. How many defensive linemen over the years have left when they shouldn't have left? What was it? Charles Walker, right?
Devontae Lampkin.
Rest in peace. Devontae Lampkin.
Amani Bledsoe had another year.
Yes, and he left, and he shouldn't have, even though he's had a decent, okay career, right? But it's been hit or miss for him. So, but those were really good players that if they stayed another year, they're probably a day 2, maybe a late day 1, day 2, early day 3 draft pick instead of looking in the late rounds, right? Like, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference. And unfortunately, Jalen Redmond was one of those. Could you imagine this defensive line with the Jalen Redmond returning. Now you've got Laulu, you have Dejoun Terry, you got Grayson Halton, you've got Kelvin Gilliam. Obviously, you've got Isaiah Coe. You got, how do you say the Paya?
Paya, yep.
Yeah, you've got Paya. You've got Jacob Lacey whenever he becomes available. You got Devon Sears. Like, it's a different looking group. Completely different looking. More athletic, bigger, stronger. And I'm here to tell y'all, we've watched those guys work twice already. And so we've got to see 25, 30% of the practices that they've had. And for my money, I'm buying the stock on Jonah Laulu. Buying a lot of stock. I'm buying stock on Dejoun Terry. And I'm going to buy me some Grayson Halton stock and Kelvin Gilliam stock. I think those four guys have a chance to be really good on the inside. And obviously at nose tackle, I think Isaiah Coe has that ability. But he's never really reached his full potential yet. This is the last year he has a chance to do so. And I think he probably will he'll get closer than he's ever gotten, if that makes sense. And then when you add that to the speed on the outside and not just the speed, the experience on the edge. Obviously, our Mason Thomas doesn't have a ton of experience, but he's got enough to know what he's doing because he flashed last year at times. And he was much smaller. He's 25 pounds lighter than he is today. And that's going to make a difference. You have a PJ Adebawore who's not going to start, but he's going to play quite a bit. And that's going to make a difference. They will have, and I've been talking to some people, they're going to have like a NASCAR or, whatever NASA package or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
To where you're probably going to have times where there's Laulu on there, where you've got Ethan Downs and Laulu as kind of the inside guys, and your exterior guys are probably going to be Adebawore and our Mason Thomas. And that's going to be nasty.
And
that's going to be nasty.
We kind of already knew this, but I just want to say that it is as conspicuous on a collegiate practice field as it was at the high school level. Again, you want to talk about a first-round body, PJ Adeboware's got one.
Oh, it's so crazy
that
he looks so different than everybody
different.
else. Yep.
And Oklahoma does not have a bunch of slouches playing at defensive end. They do not have a bunch of also-ran Jags in that room. But PJ Adebawore just dwarfs all of them.
Are we talking about Parker? Ethan Downs is a Jag. Reggie Grimes is a Jag. Okay, here's the thing. Ethan Downs has dropped weight, just for everybody that doesn't know. Last year, he played at over 280 pounds. He's under 270 right now. So if he can get that speed back that he played with in 2021 with his experience, you would think he's going to have a better year. And he still had a good year last year. 4.5 sacks, led the league. Did he lead the league, the conference in tackles for losses? That's correct, right?
I don't know.
He had 12, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me on that. I don't know that he led the conference, but he did have double-digit tackle for losses last year. And he had 4.5 sacks. So my point is that if he's not starting and that's your backup guy. That means Bothroyd and or our Mason Thomas. That means they're pretty dang good. So we've talked about it a lot, Parker. The front four should be way better this year. And am I BSing when I say you talk to people around the program and they adamantly will tell you how much better they are, won't they? Like they are confident in how good they are up front. It's
and again,
cover three. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, everybody feels good about their team in August.
They do. Right? They do. But I thought it was interesting, dude. Cover 3, the podcast with Bud and all them.
Yeah.
One of them brought up, and they said, Brent Venables doesn't normally talk real cocky and say the things that he said, obviously about a couple of coaches and about certain things this offseason. He's been stirring the pot. BV's been stirring the pot, whether
Sure.
knowingly or on purpose, whatever. But he's done it. And they're like, one of them stopped after they were doing the over under, and they were like, "Yeah, I think they're going to be the over." And it was almost a consensus, so everybody had him at the over, 9.5, just because of the schedule alone.
Yeah, well, again, like the schedule is so much easier than their schedule a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is any degree of improvement, Brandon, again, we are not talking about a team that needs to be night and day better than they were in 2022 to win a lot more football games. They just need to be a team that's capable of making 3 or 4 plays here or there over the course of 60 minutes to turn 3-point losses into 10-point wins.
Mm-hmm.
And you are
No,
talking about a team that's 10-2, 11-1, and playing in a Big 12 championship game.
very correct. But ifs and buts,
Yeah.
what they
So
say.
again, like
So what it should have, could
all
have.
all that to say though, I added the disclaimer that everybody feels good about their team in August. But I think it's easier to feel good about your team right now from Brent Venables' perspective and to a broader scale from Oklahoma's perspective. If you are mindful of the razor thin margins last year between 6 wins and 9 or 10 wins, and you just have reason to believe, as Oklahoma does, that there is going to be some semblance of improvement that puts you in better position to win a lot of those football games that you lost a year ago against a much easier schedule. It's all right there in front of Oklahoma. So I guess what I'm saying is this is not a hard team to feel good about in August. And it shouldn't just be written off as, oh, of course the coaches love their team because everybody loves their team in August. That's true. But Oklahoma is one of those programs right now nationally that it seems everybody, national pundits included, is kind of starting to come around on and going, okay, with this schedule, with this roster, with this coaching staff, the pieces are in place.
Mm-hmm. And to expound on that a little bit, when I was saying about the cover 3, they went on to say, does BV know something that we don't know? And they were genuinely asking that. Like, they wanted to know, does he know something? Because coaches don't normally say the things that he said publicly this offseason unless you're real confident about what you've got coming back. And I guess that rolls around into do you buy into the coincidences? Are you buying stock in the coincidences of 2000 ranked 19th after a 7 and I think were they 7-5 or 7-6 that year or whatever? I think it was 7-5. After a 7-5 season, Oklahoma was 6-7. Second year coach from K State. Like, both of them come from winning national titles at a different school as a defensive coordinator. Left-handed quarterback. Dylan Gabriel wears number 8, and they're going for number 8. What was it? What was the other one that was just so like they're ridiculous? I mean, but they make you think, right, Parker? Like when you read all those coincidences, you're like, that is super weird. That's a lot of coincidences, all in one little season. Obviously, I don't generally buy it because there's not a murderer's row in October, right? That was the Red October is what they called it back then.
Yeah.
So there's none of that going on. So you don't really like it's stupid, but it's been good fodder on Twitter the last few days. So I guess after seeing a couple of practices and everything you've heard, are you still confident in your, what did you say, 10-2?
I said 10-2.
Okay. You still confident?
Yeah. Very,
Yeah.
very confident and comfortable.
Just like them coaches in August, Parker. You're just confident in your pick.
Yeah. No, I again, kind of like I just explained, I think all the pieces are there for this football team in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they take care of business and as long as they are better, doesn't matter how much, as long as they are better than they were in 2022, you are looking at a football team that will win double-digit games this fall.
Could you imagine the phone calls I would get if I came on? I think it's crap, and I think they're going 5-7 again. I promise you, 2 days from now, I'd have like 6 phone calls from people. That's not the phone call I'd want to take after for that prediction. No, I'm with you. I agree. I guess. I just feel better overall. Even at linebacker, I feel better about Oklahoma situation. Like, there is so much talent across the board at linebacker that it's hard for me to not sit here and say that they aren't going to not just be better, but like noticeably better. And mind you, Danny Stutzman was good last year at linebacker. He was just burnt out by the end of the year. And on that note, another thing I've been told, Parker, is that, and we've already seen it, they've given him a day off after, 4 practices? They gave him a day off already. And that's because BV does not want to wear them out. He said that was his mistake last year, not playing the young guys and wearing his team out. They were in midseason form going into game 1. By game 4, their legs were gone. Mm-hmm. Their legs were completely gone. So now they're just going to work up to it, they say, and it's going to be different. The intensity hasn't lagged as far as what they do when they practice. Now it's the quantity of practices. You're going to see them take days off every few days. They're going to get a day off to recoup instead of just running them in the ground. Culture's set. The culture's set, and they know that. Now it's time to build upon that culture with wins. So, recruiting side of things.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. I don't even want to talk about recruiting, to be honest with you. I'm so just like, I'm burnt, bro. Especially on the topic we've got to talk about.
Man, it's
August 14th. Williams Winery, 5-star, arguably the number 1 player in the country, number 3 on rivals.com. Missouri, Oklahoma, Georgia, Tennessee, Oregon. Where's your gut?
Man, first off, I basically took 2 days off of following / covering recruiting this weekend, which, by the way, Josh Isosa, great kid. Obviously got his dream opportunity to play at the University of Oklahoma, but from my perspective, he announced at the worst possible time on Saturday afternoon. That aside.
He did. It was awful. Like, you're walking down the aisle and I had to start tweeting.
Exactly. 4 p.m. on Saturday, August 5th, when I got married at 4 p.m. on Saturday, August 5th. But that aside, and, you know, he honestly was a super good sport about it. We were texting beforehand. He was like, man, if it'll help you out at all, I can announce at 3 instead. I was like, dude, you know what? This is what I got coworkers for. Don't you sweat it. Do your thing. It's the biggest day of your life and mine. So let's just both enjoy it. But I took essentially 2 days off of following recruiting. And I wouldn't say I was totally out of the loop when I quote unquote came back, Brandon. But, like, for instance, it was news to me that Nigel Smith's Texas official visit wasn't happening anymore, which it's not like anybody was ever really worried about what the outcome of Nigel Smith's official visit to Texas was going to be, even if he had taken it. But even so, I posted a big long update on OUinsider.com, and one of the things I noted in a paragraph on Nigel Smith was, yeah, you know, for what it's worth, he's got that official visit to Texas scheduled. And instantly somebody got in the comment section was like, actually, he pulled that off. he pulled that off the schedule over the weekend.
Yeah, I text you after I read that. I thought maybe you could edit before people started getting around.
Oh,
Let's
I
see.
did. I edited it
Okay.
immediately. I was just basically like, "Hey, sorry, I was preoccupied this weekend." But man, like
Yeah.
it is a frenetic time of the year right now on the recruiting calendar. I'm going to be out of pocket from August 17th through August 24th, which, given that Nwaneri is committing on the 14th and David Stone is committing on the 26th, works out pretty nicely because at least I get to sandwich in between the 5 stars. But man, the Nwaneri situation is something else right now. And I mean, you know this. I
Mm-hmm.
we shared a phone call earlier.
Yes.
And it's been a very, very intriguing isn't even the right word. It's just been laborious, man. It's been a task to cover and follow this one. And it's not on the kid, to be quite honest with you. It's not like the kid is on social media playing up all the schools that are recruiting him as the ones that are like, he's not posting OV pictures with the home emojis and trying to drum up interactions. He's just, I mean, more so than anything else, he's keeping a low profile about it all as we sit here less than a week from the decision. And I've said this for 3 weeks now, and I'll stand by it. This is Oklahoma and Missouri. Everybody else is out of the picture. I know plenty of people have been talking about Georgia. Some people have been trying to drum up some noise about Tennessee again. No, it's Oklahoma and it's Missouri.
Is he an early enrollee?
That I don't know. I believe so. I
Well,
don't
see,
know
because
that with
somebody on our
100%.
board said he's not.
I don't know that with certainty. Um, I know that program naturally tries to put their guys in the best position possible to get to college and succeed. So I would figure they are doing their best to fast track Will towards an early enrollee type of deal. But I will confirm that beyond a shadow of a doubt. So yeah, August 14th is the decision date, and I would be lying, Brandon, if I didn't at least acknowledge that Missouri has made this thing interesting.
Mm.
And I think what is of particular intrigue is that all of a sudden Missouri has some momentum with Ryan Wingo as well, the other 5-star from within the Show Me State. And that's a recruitment that's kind of been all over the place. And I feel as though most folks kind of understand what's dictating the Wingo recruitment. With Nwaneri, man, part of the reason it's come down to OU and Missouri, and we've talked about this too, is that it's proximity and it's relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And he himself told our former colleague Steve Wiltfong today, he was very honest about it. He said, look, NIL is going to play a part in the decision, but it's not the primary factor. And I'll tell you, I've known that kid for 2 years, and that's a kid that's being honest. I've said it from the get-go. He's not going to be bought. NIL is going to, for any 5-star, NIL is going to be a cog in the machine, but it's not going to be what makes the decision. And so I think when you understand that about Will, then you start to look at this recruitment for all of the ancillary factors and all of the boxes that Missouri and Oklahoma can each tick respectively. And this is why, based on my gut and intuition, in addition to conversations with a multiplicity of sources, Brandon, I'm still riding with OU in this one. And some may argue the trend has been with Missouri as of late. And am I going to completely disavow that? No, but it has not, as of yet, changed my opinion on where this thing ultimately lands in the end. Because one of the things that we talked about on our call earlier, Brandon, was that I've heard it from so many angles, not just the Oklahoma side and the Lee Summit North side, but from neutral parties involved in the Nwaneri recruitment from alternate angles. They've said the kid loves Oklahoma. And he loves Miguel Chavis. And he loves the familiarity that is there with coaches that have invested in him, and particularly with Chavis, who's been right there for almost a year and a half now in the recruiting process and has built a rock solid relationship with him and his family. And all of those factors in mind, I'm not budging here, Brant. Like, if something changes materially and substantially in the next few days, obviously we're going to keep people apprised at ouinsider.com. But, unless I have very objective reason to believe that the trajectory of this recruitment has shifted within the 6 days between now and when Neri makes his announcement next Monday, I'm going down with the ship here, man. Like the intel suggests Oklahoma, and I'm riding with that. If it blows up in my face, so be it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of this talk of, well, if he signs a financial aid agreement, he can start being paid on September 1st. And if he's an early enrollee, if he's not an early enrollee, that means he gets paid for 10 months from Missouri. Okay. So we talked to some people about that today. And they're under the impression that if that is the case, and Missouri is allowing that through their own state law, then if he was to choose Oklahoma, that could also be, is that how you understood it? It could be done the same because of fair trade laws.
Yes.
It'd be unconstitutional to not allow it. If that was the case, is that how you understood it?
That is how I understood it as well.
So I guess what I'm getting at is it really that big of a difference? Because if Missouri is allowing it to happen and through fair trade laws, and look, we're not lawyers, we're just going off of what we're told. So if there's somebody smarter than us that wants to go read that law through the Missouri state, and it was at 1417, something to that extent off the NIL law, you can go read their new NIL law in Missouri, that if they're allowed to do it, they cannot stop another program like an Oregon or Oklahoma or Georgia from doing the same thing, because that would be considered unconstitutional and break a lot of free trade laws and agreements through state to state. That's how it was understood to both of us, right?
Correct.
Like and said. So, okay. So where's the difference here? Like how if that is truly the case, why are people making such a big deal about that? Because even in another article that was posted on our board, I guess where Steve Wilfong said, and I guess when Ari was quoting, said, yes, that is something that is on my mind, weighing heavily on my mind, is the NIL and being paid early and all that type of stuff through Missouri. That makes me think that maybe they're not going to allow other state institutions to do that. But that would seem severely illegal, would it not?
Man,
I don't understand it, but I'm just saying
that's what I'm kind of at with all of it, man, is that at a certain point you just have to acknowledge, like, I'm a recruiting reporter. I don't get into the politics of all of this, and honestly, like, don't really have the time and the energy to devote to learning all of the nuances of this particular situation. But as we have come to understand it, yes, what you relayed is accurate. And so what I keep coming back to with this, Brandon, is what does Missouri have going for? Like, bias aside, if we're looking at this from a sheerly objective standpoint, what does Missouri have going for it that Oklahoma doesn't? I can think of one thing, and that is proximity. And it's not as if Oklahoma is a haul from Kansas City. It's not as close as Columbia, sure, but that is that, and the length of the relationship with Nwaneri. Those are the two advantages that Missouri has. But you're thinking about prestige, development. I would say NIL earning opportunities at Oklahoma in the long term are probably higher. Strength and conditioning, playing within a scheme where you don't have to worry about getting double teamed because the rest of that defensive line is going to be good enough that they're not going to be able to afford to double team anybody as the opposition. There's so much that Oklahoma can offer to a kid like Williams and Nwaneri that Missouri just isn't in a place to offer right now. That's a program, moreover, that has gone 17-19 without a winning season under Elijah Drinkwitz. So,
okay, so let me ask you this before you on exactly what you're talking about.
Yes.
If he commits to Missouri on August 14th, do you believe the way I believe and what other people we've talked to believe that there's still a very, very good chance he signs with Oklahoma?
Okay, well,
come December.
If you think for a second that given the amount of time and energy and sweat equity that the University of Oklahoma has poured into recruiting Williams Nwaneri, if you think for a second that they are going to be deterred by a commitment to Missouri from the number one defensive end in the country until he puts pen to paper on signing day, you're kidding yourself. Yeah, Oklahoma's not going to let that one die. Like, this is not going to be a Zadavian Sims type of situation where, for multiple reasons, Oklahoma decides, okay, we're just going to call it a day here. We're done. You can go be committed to that school, and we're both going to go our separate ways and be content with the outcome. No, Oklahoma will do everything in their power to try and get Williams Nwaneri back in the fold. Well, in the fold for the first time, I suppose. Even if he does commit to Missouri on the 14th, then OU has to play the long game till National Signing Day. So, again, the way it was phrased to me, and this is a direct quote from another Power 5 staff that was recruiting Williams Nwaneri. The way it was phrased to me is that kid is enamored with Oklahoma. Their words, not mine. So, you tell me, is that kid really going to stay committed to Missouri for 4 months till National Signing Day if Oklahoma and Miguel Chavis are constantly pressing him to come play big boy SEC ball? And I know Missouri's in the SEC, but again, there's there's a difference right now between where Oklahoma is as a program and where Missouri is as a program. So is it going to be feasible, especially if Missouri has the season we expect them to have, for them to hold on to the number one defensive end in the country when the school that, by his own admission, he loves and has great relationships with is pushing him for the next 4 months and using the results of the 2023 season to justify their pitch to that kid to try to get him on board?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think for me, I still think it's Oklahoma, but I mean, it's also stupid and naive not to sit there and say, and I don't think there's anybody out there now that's even remotely not considering Missouri an issue, because they're a major issue for Oklahoma right now in this recruitment. And the weird part is they've just quietly, just slowly kind of lurked and then pounced as it's gotten closer and closer to a decision. Now, having said that, and this is up-to-date information literally within the last hour of us starting this podcast, Oklahoma seems to be fairly confident still. And They are communicating with Winery on multiple creative fronts. They were doing things that I haven't, it's really, they're being very, very creative in how they're approaching this recruitment as it gets down to the nitty gritty and the final decision date. And they're also collective wise being super aggressive. And when you add those two things, and I will say this, we had a source tell it, Parker and I had a source tell us today, there is no way. And I've said this specifically on the podcast. I've said it on the radio, and I've wrote it on the website, and it's true. And this source confirmed it 100%. They are not breaking the bank, nor are they going to ruin their culture for one person. Now, they're going to be aggressive and do everything they can to get Williams Winery, but there is zero chance that Oklahoma ruins what they've built for one guy.
Which is to say that Oklahoma isn't going to straight up buy a player.
Correct. Now they'll how do you soften that? Because that you made it seem like they're not going to play the NIL game.
Well, no, I did.
No, because some people are going to read into that, and I'm just
okay, sure.
They're going to play. They're going to play the game. They're playing it super aggressively, but they're not going to throw $1 million at it. We're $750,000. I just can't see that happening. Can you?
No, and again, when I say Oklahoma's not going to buy a player, what I mean is, if the only reason that kid would commit to Oklahoma is because Oklahoma offered him X amount of money, then in Brent Venables and his staff's perspective, that's not a kid worth having on the roster.
Correct.
So what I think we can say,
they're not going to sell their souls to get
exactly.
a player.
But I think what we can say indisputably about Williams and Winery is that he's got a dozen reasons besides money to commit to the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, and I got to add, so I explained a lot of this on the site just a second ago, and because people are asking, they're like, oh, well, September 1st, and he's not an early enrollee and all that. I don't know if he's not. I can neither confirm or deny that, neither can you. And so they instantly go, so are you feeling better than the odds you did the other night? We're still have OU 40, 35, 25, OU, Missouri, UGA. Look, I'm not going to raise my percentages. And it's not fence riding. It's because this recruitment, more than anything I've dealt with outside of DJ Hicks, has been so topsy-turvy. And the weird part is DJ Hicks, I was so adamant he was going to Oklahoma because he was committed.
Again, because he was
committed to Oklahoma until he wasn't. And so this is one where I'm going to sit back and I'm going to tell you all, I think he's going to Oklahoma, but I'm going to sit here and tell you if he chooses Missouri on the 14th, this guy's not going to be shocked it took place. That guy is not going to be shocked it took place. But at the same time, I don't think it's over if he chooses Missouri. I will, till National Signing Day takes place, I will sit here and tell you it is not over with Williams Winery, particularly if they go out 5-7, 4-8, like everybody expects. And that's not to say I think Drinkwitz is a good coach. I just think when you're in the SEC and Missouri hasn't been exactly a magnet for top tier talent for years. And before he was hired, it was already a hard program to build up the way Gary Pinkel did it, right? And then when it dropped off, it's even harder to bring back, particularly because they lost a lot of their recruiting grounds. Now, if this situation was taking place 3 years from now, after Oklahoma and Texas had been in the SEC for several years and Missouri was able to get back in the state of Oklahoma, get back in the state of Texas the way they used to, Because if you went back and look at the rosters when they were really good, ton of Oklahoma, ton of Texas kids on that roster. Those two states produced talent. And they lost a lot of that recruiting ground. So that's why I think it's been so hard for Drinkwitz to build that thing up. There just isn't the recruiting grounds the way they don't have the recruiting pipelines the way they did when they were in the Big 12.
No. And I think when and we've kind of examined the worst case scenario here, which is that Nwaneri commits to Missouri on August 14th. Mm-hmm. But to kind of riff off of that a little bit more, and again, that schedule for Missouri in 2023 is pretty daunting. Brandon, what generally happens to a coach when they don't have a winning season in their first 4 years at the helm of a Power 5 program?
They usually get canned.
There you go. So Drinkwitz is in prove it mode, man. And if they don't prove it in 2023, is one player or two, a couple of prized recruits, going to be enough to give the guy the benefit of the doubt and extend to him a 5th season at the helm? Because those two guys as true freshmen aren't going to magically turn things around at your university.
Right.
They're not. And I know people say Drinkwitz just got an extension, they're not going to part ways with him that soon. Look, we've seen guys get fired for much less with much more left on their contract. Mm-hmm. And never underestimate the craving to win now in college football.
Correct. Yeah, no, and look, to end this off, Parker and I think still feel it's Oklahoma, and you got to throw that but in there. There's still 6 days to go. We're going to have plenty of updates on OU Insider over the next 6 days.
And a lot can change in 6 days, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a lifetime in recruiting. A lifetime. 4 days before Jaden Jackson committed to Oklahoma, he was going to Ohio State, according to everybody. 3 days before, he's going to Texas. 2 days before, he's going to Miami. The day before, he's going to Oklahoma, and he commits to Oklahoma. So, and mind you, source that we know told us a week in advance that it was Oklahoma. But man, there was a lot of moving parts that happened in between. Whether it was misinformation or not, Oklahoma fan, you've got to understand there's going to be a lot of crap that's thrown out there in the next 6 days, and 80% of it's going to be BS. It just is, because of just how big of a recruit he is. So just understand that going into this, and know that we're going to try to bring you the direct stuff that we know on OUinsider.com. And we're going to tell you, if we think it's Missouri a couple days before, we'll tell you it's Missouri. Like, we're not going to shade away from that. So we'll have everything on that on OUinsider.com coming up. Right now, we both still think it's Oklahoma. 6 days to go. That's the problem. 6 days to go. 6 grueling days. All right, I'm going to see another 5-star on the 12th. On the 11th.
Oh, nice.
On the 11th.
I think I know which 5-star you're referring to.
And Jaden Jackson, yeah. And I'm going to see Jaden Jackson at IMG. I was invited to IMG's Media Day. Sent me an email, invited me, got a plane, going down there, going to go check it out. I'm leaving the 10th. We'll be back on the 12th here. Then I'm going to go see the new baby, 4D. Then go to my kids, meet the Broncos or whatever it's called. And where they have all the kids, all the little league teams play each other, and then bring out the Broncos. Then the high school team comes out and scrimmages after that. So it's going to be a busy weekend. Next week, I will be going to see Okoye. I'm going to go see the Carl Albert guys again. And I'm going to go try to go down and see DJ McKinley at some point, and try to make the trek down there. Having said all that, and I know everybody's going to ask this, do we still feel good about 5-star defensive tackle David Stone? Yes. Yes, I still think it's Oklahoma. Obviously, Miami's trying to make a run, but Miami's offering quite a few defensive linemen here lately. And from my understanding, speaking to a few people, that may be because they don't feel they're in the standing they thought they were with David Stone. Look, David Stone wanted to get this thing over with. Like, he is over the recruiting process. He's done. If you haven't noticed, he's gone completely silent since he announced his date. Have you noticed that, Parker?
Yes.
Like, a guy that is always out there is not out there at all anymore. So it would be very shocking if he chose anything but Oklahoma. Seen crazier things happen. But again, said it with Williams Winery. Going to say it here. OU's collective is being more than aggressive when it comes to that. And that when you have his close friend and teammate there, then you have all of his other close friends committing. I like Oklahoma's odds. I like Oklahoma's odds there. That brings us to Grant Bricks.
And on that
and that's
note,
on you, Parker. You talk about that one.
I will be in rural Iowa this weekend.
Yep.
Touching base with Bricks in person again. And look, I've talked to some very authoritative sources on the Oklahoma side of things, and there's a ton of comfort right now in where they stand with Bricks. They believe they're getting the kid. The preeminent question on the OU end right now, though, is why is this taking so long? And why has a decision not officially come yet? Why has the kid not locked in his commitment? What is he waiting on here? Why can't he just say no to Nebraska and Kansas State? And honestly, like, Brandon, if I'm looking at this from an objective standpoint here, and we're going to call a spade in this recruitment, I believe Oklahoma has until the end of the month of August to finish this thing and to get Grant Bricks in the class. Mm-hmm. Because the second September rolls around, you know what Nebraska and Kansas State are going to be doing? Be trying to get him down there for a game day visit.
Yep.
Saying, hey, just come make the little short drive. Come see a game day. Tell us you don't want to be part of this experience. It's a lot easier to drive to Lincoln, Nebraska or Manhattan, Kansas from Logan, Iowa on a Saturday morning than it is to drive all the way to Norman, Oklahoma. So I guess to sum my feelings on this recruitment up very concisely, I will have more on OU Insider this weekend after I touch base with Bricks. But I believe if a decision is made in the month of August, it goes in Oklahoma's favor. I start to get a lot more skeptical if it drags into September. Because the longer this thing lasts, the better it looks for the schools that are closer geographically to OU. But again, I will reiterate it. OU feels very, very confident about where they sit right now in the recruitment of my favorite offensive line prospect in the entire country and a guy that's got day one potential at the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah. So you still like Oklahoma?
I still like Oklahoma, man.
Okay. If it's not Oklahoma, where do you think he goes? K-State with the girlfriend? Well, do they stand defeated at that point?
The girlfriend factor is no longer in play, from what I am told. So, if it's not,
wow. Are we getting the dish that they broke up?
it feels weird to expound upon
Super
that
weird.
situation.
Don't even go there, dude. I was totally joking. Don't go there. Do not go there. No, but there's fans. I asked that jokingly, but there will be serious fans. They're like, tell us, Parker, did they break up? That is critical.
I would be willing to bet that if it is not Oklahoma, it is Kansas State, because I just think the Bricks family, as well as Grant.
Agriculture.
Well, agriculture, sure. But also, I think there are some healthy concerns, apprehensions perhaps, about the proof of concept at Nebraska or lack thereof. And Matt Rule has won places where other guys haven't been able to. but to do it at Nebraska is a different challenge. And I think the fact that the rule era is so new at Nebraska, while Kansas State is coming off a Big 12 championship, they were Bricks's first offer. They had the early jump on building the relationship, and the Big 12 suddenly looks revitalized. I think that's enough to give Kansas State the best pitch to go up against Oklahoma in this recruitment right now. I believe OU leads. I believe that lead was lengthened at the end of July. But to answer your question, if it's not Oklahoma, I would be willing to bet it's Kansas State.
Okay. And I guess the look, I expect Eli Bowen, 4-star defensive back Eli Bowen, obviously Peyton Bowen's little brother, to announce probably before September 1st. I was told it's supposed to happen before and that's another school I'm going to go down and visit here in the next 10 days or so. And probably go to a couple more. I'm probably going to try to hit as many as I can in DFW at the same time. Yeah, I really think that will be done. And that, look, everybody wants to harp and they're like, oh, well, he's 5'10", this and that. What about Texas? I don't think Texas was a player. Like, they were a legitimate player for Eli Bowen. I think the funny part is that there was some talk of the family disliking Oklahoma. I was told that was complete BS from the get-go, by the way. And now it's the same people that started those rumors are saying, well, this is what I've been told at least. So that Eli waited too long and his time ran out for Texas to take the commitment. That just seems very convenient for somebody that said that he is not. I can tell you where he's not going to sign: the University of Oklahoma. I wouldn't be shocked if Peyton Bowen didn't make it through half the season. Was that exact? Did I get the exact phrase on that?
I have no idea, but it was from a known proprietor of misinformation. So,
yeah. All right. Anyways, point being is that, look, if he chose Texas, I would be super shocked. I think everybody would be super shocked because my understanding right now is that Oklahoma feels really good about where they stand. There's a good chance that Peyton Bowen, he may not start, but he's going to be a main fixture on the defense from the get-go. And by the end of the season, don't be shocked to see him as a starter. I mean, that's kind of what I've been told lately. And then it goes to 4-star safety target Michael Boganowski. As Parker noted, with Bricks, K-State is Oklahoma's biggest contender and challenger there. And that was a recruitment that once seemed like it was going to be done in the month of August. I cannot sit here and tell you definitively that is going to take place now. It seems like there is a lot of back and forth. And I think the weird part is that it almost feels like, and this is me, and I hope Mike Sr., this is just my opinion, so maybe I'm wrong, and text me if I'm wrong, Mike, please, because I know you're probably going to listen to this. The kid is super torn, and it almost feels like sometimes when that happens, you take the easiest choice would be to stay at home.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, look, I share your feelings on that 100%, Brandon. We were supposed to have a decision from Boganowski in July. It's obviously now August and there's no end in sight, right? And it's one of those deals where there's never I would say once that early July deadline passed, there was never a clear timeline on when the decision was going to get made. So it could just as easily end tomorrow as it could last another several weeks.
Very true. Very true.
But the longer this drags out, and this is not the first time we've said this, the longer this drags out, the better you feel if you're Kansas State.
They're playing the long game here. Like it is so obvious. The writing is on the wall. Kansas State wants this thing to drag out forever because they want Oklahoma to just go, you know what? We're tired of waiting around. We're going to go grab somebody else.
Yep.
And therefore, OU's made the decision for Boganowski. And that's just my opinion. Like, I could be so wrong. And like I said, I hope Boganowski Sr. would text you and I or call you and I to tell us that. Because I'm sure he will. He's a great guy. And he's not shy about anything either. So, which makes it awesome to deal with. But yeah, it just feels like they want this to drag out. Like they do not want him making a decision. Because I think if a decision was made, like if it's made before September 1st, I still feel pretty good about Oklahoma. But if it's not made before September 1st, that's when you got to sit there and go, okay, K-State's winning this battle because they're getting dragged out, and he can start going to the games because it's right down the road. It's not as easy for him to get to Norman as it is to Manhattan because he's 15 minutes from the campus in Junction City. So all of that starts to play in. Obviously, you still have the relationship with Coach Stannard and the Boganowski family for multiple decades. So that also plays into this. I will add this, though. Mike Sr. is not swaying his kid one way or the other. No matter what you hear, he is not telling his kid to go this place or that place. He wants his kid to make the decision what's best for him. So the poor kid is just torn right now. I do know he's just focusing on his senior year right now and having fun and going through his fall camp for his senior season right now. And that's kind of his goal. But as you said, Parker, he could wake up one day and just go, I'm going to commit. And I think that's what we're waiting on. And that would be very on par for Mike as personality wise too, because he's just so laid back and doesn't care. Like in general, that's just who he is. What
if after all this, he commits to Kansas?
That's not happening. But it would be funny.
I know it's not, but like
his parents didn't even go on the visit.
This whole thing drags out as long as it has, and then he's like, "I'm a Jayhawk."
Oh my god! Hey man, more power to him. That's it as far as 24. Well, Dominic McKinley. Before we close out, I guess we got to talk about him. I don't know. OU, Texas, LSU. I don't know. I know Oklahoma's done a dang good job with him. Yeah. That I can tell you. I can tell you, Mama loves the soul mission. Mama loves the faith, and we've said that for months on OU Insider. And Mama they love the visit. They love Coach Bates, the relationship. If it was down to relationships, it's Oklahoma. Yeah. But again, that's what OU fans hate to hear. We always finish second, and we're always the best relationship. But in this case, I mean, I don't think it's LSU. That I feel comfortable saying right now. And watch, I be totally wrong. I do not think it's LSU, though.
Okay. I'll say this much. Like, there are certain junctures in this industry where even the best of us just have to acknowledge that we're not 100% sure what is going on here at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel as though that's about where everybody that's being honest with themselves is with the McKinley situation, because OU is confident, Texas is confident, LSU is confident. When you got three schools that are confident, none of them should be very confident.
Yeah, I don't know that LSU is that confident though right now. Like, I really don't. I don't think they are. I think they feel they did well, but I think there's just been so many missteps in bad situations at the defensive line position that it's just left them kind of in limbo at some point. But again, they have the location, and you cannot throw that out. Remember when we said we'll never throw LSU out of the equation here?
Yeah,
No
exactly.
matter how
Like,
bad things are looking for them, they still got a chance because they're LSU and they're 45 minutes from his house. Period. But
yeah,
as Parker said, we don't know.
there are
We don't
some
know. We don't know.
there are some recruitments, man, and you brought up Jaden Jackson earlier. Jaden Jackson is a perfect example. It's really freaking difficult to get a read on a recruitment sometimes up until the very end of the process. And even then, it doesn't always become apparent.
Yeah, we just got lucky on that one.
No joke.
Sources, yeah, the source told, hey, you need to have a story ready.
Um, but if McKinley is indeed planning to announce by early September, then that doesn't leave all that much time for anybody or anything to change his mind. So wherever the kid's leaning right now, and it's tough to decipher where that is, that's the school that's going to end up having the inside track. It's just 5 stars, man. 5 stars. I swore off covering 5 stars. I was just going to let that be your wheelhouse, but then I ended up with a 5-star at the one school that I've been to more than any other school in the country over the last 2.5 years.
Sure. And you got another one in 25. So, I mean, that one's going to be a little easier. Isaiah Mosey. What
I would hope so.
do you think do you think even if he drags it out, it's still going to be Oklahoma?
I do expect
my concern is numbers.
I am not concerned about numbers just because I think Oklahoma realizes whatever the numbers are, they've got to take that kid. Like they've got to make room for him. They've got to keep room for him. And that family loves Emmett Jones. Loves him. The relationship there between Ike and the coach and the family and the coach is better at Oklahoma than anywhere else. But that said, Ike's got a level head on his shoulders. He's not rushing this decision. What I expect right now is that, and I there was initially a thought in my mind and in the minds of some folks close to Isaiah that he was going to shut things down and commit before his junior season, i.e., by the end of this month. As of right now, my expectation is that he's going to wait till after his junior season. And part of the onus behind that is because he wants to see these offenses in action. He wants to see these schools that he's considering. Right now, there are 2 at the top of the list, Oklahoma and Oregon, with Tennessee a relatively distant third. But OU and Oregon are the 2 schools that he likes the most. And he wants to see how both of those offenses function because Oregon is breaking in a new offensive coordinator in Will Stein, who came from UTSA. And obviously, Emmett Jones is in his first season as OU's wide receivers coach. So there's a sense of newness at both of those places with what they're doing with their wide receivers. And so, quite understandably, from what I'm told, Isaiah wants to see how everything looks for both of those schools before he locks in a decision. So OU's going to leave the light on for that kid. They've got 3 wide receiver commits. They would take 4 if Isaiah is the 4th. And so as we sit here today, I do expect that Mosey is going to be a Sooner.
But what if somebody commits before Mosey?
Again, man, like you have to take.
We feel pretty good about Jaden Nickens on the 12th. Okay, so that's 3.
You have
25
to
already.
take. You have got to take Isaiah Mosey. It doesn't matter how.
So you take 5 if you got to. Gotcha.
If you have to take 5, you take 5 because there are some bridges you can't afford to burn. And burning a bridge at least Summit North would not be to Oklahoma's advantage going forward, right? Because that school is stacked with P5 talent for the next several years. Caden Green's younger brother Caleb is a class of 27 edge rusher that's going to be just starting to play high school football this year. And was talking to a real good source about Caleb tonight. And that source up at Lee's Summit North told me, yeah, he's exactly like his brother from a mentality standpoint. He's not going to be quite as tall in all likelihood, but if he's 6'2", 6'3", even, and as nasty as he is already off the edge, that's a kid that's going to play high-end Division I football and make an impact.
How tall is he right now?
About 5'11". Still growing.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a good place for us to stop right here. Again, the next, I don't know, what's today? The 8th. You'll probably be listening to this on the 9th, right? Correct? No, today's the 8th. You'll be listening to it on the 8th. So over the next 18, 19 days, there is going to be a lot of movement, whether good, bad, indifferent, whatever, on Oklahoma's side of the recruiting trail. And to be on top of all that and to get the notes that we update every day, you've got to be on OUinsider.com and you got to be on the VIP. And that's going to get you right now $9.95, can get you month to month. You can give us a shot. Just give us a try. Try us out. See if you like us. If you don't like us, move on. Do what you feel you need to do. However, you can solidify a whole year if you want to for $99, and that will get you all the way through the season, both national signing days, the bowl game, all the junior days in January, February, March, spring ball, all the visits, all the official visits, all the champion barbecue, the party in the palace. It'll roll you right back around to this day or whatever day you sign up in August before you have to re-up right as fall camp's kicking off. So this is the time to do it. If you're going to do it, this is the time to do it if you want to sign up on OU Insider. Lots of movement on the recruiting trail. This could be a make or break for Oklahoma month. All the way to probably September 9th or 10th is make or break. That literally the next 32, 33 days is make or break for this 2024 class. If they win another top 5 class, this is how they're going to have to do in the next 33 days. And we're going to have you covered. I'm going to IMG. He's going up to Kansas City. He's going to Iowa, which means Winery, Stone. I'm going to go see Nigel Smith, even though he's not going to give an interview. I'm still going to talk to some people around Melissa. I'm going to go down to Denton Geyer. There's several offers there. I'm going to go try to go see DJ McKinley before he announces, obviously down in Louisiana. We're going to be across the nation seeing a whole lot of guys also covering fall camp at the same time. So we're going to have you covered head to toe, front to back, make sure that you guys know everything that's going on with the team heading into the 2023 season and on the recruiting trail for 24 and 25. And the only way to do that is sign up at OUinsider.com, VIP right now, $9.95 or $99.95. We can't wait to have you. We can't thank you guys enough. We've been one of the fastest growing rivals sites that there is. And it's been amazing. Super amazing. Also, Drink Olipop.
Drink Olipop.
Thank them for the sponsor. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe. We're almost to 10.5. We're almost to 10,500 subs in a matter of 18 months. We would love to beat 11,000 by the season. Help us get there. If you are not subscribed to our podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, you name it, Podcast Addict, Amazon, Audible, all those, we're on everything. Go give us 5 stars, please. Give us a good rating. Give us a good review. We can't thank you guys enough. Thank you. We feel blessed to be able to do this. Having said that, that is going to do it for the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners podcast, powered by Olipop for Parker Thune. My name's Brandon Drum. You guys have a blessed night.